All right, Joe, I understand Howard Finkel ties into your career pretty well. Let's get into that.
Yes. So I kind of touched on it earlier that, as a kid, rather than a wrestler, an in-ring talent, Howard Finkel was my idol. Howard Finkel was who I looked up to. When I used to play with the wrestling figures as a kid, it was all about the entrance rather than the match. And I would always do the announcements, the whole spiel down the aisle, and it would always be me emulating Howard Finkel to some extent. And forward all these years later, I'm in Pompton Plains, New Jersey, at a Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame dinner, which was the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame at that time based out of Amsterdam, New York. They were doing a special dinner run by Irish Terry Gunn. And it was a fundraiser dinner for the hall. And it was in Pompton Plains, New Jersey. I went with my buddy Steve. And there was a meet and greet beforehand. There was a big yard sale with Mick Foley. It was called the Hardcore Yard Sale, I believe. and Howard Finkel was there. And we walk in, and I'll never forget this. Me looking up to Howard. I see him there, and I'm like, wow, Howard Finkel, who I had met a couple times as a fan. Super quick interaction, maybe just a photo or an autograph as a young kid, So Howard approaches Steve and I, and he says, he goes, hello, Howard Finkel. And he shakes both of our hands and he goes, where are you guys coming from this evening? And I'm like, kind of just, blown away that I'm standing here talking to Howard, even that far in the game, again, because Howard is somebody I've always looked up to and emulated with the whole ring announcing and everything. And I tell him, well, Steve says he's from Massachusetts. I said, well, I'm from Rhode Island. And he says, well, wait a minute. You must know about the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. And I was blown away when he said that. I was literally in shock. I couldn't even speak. Steve had to intervene, my buddy Steve, and say, yeah, Joe runs the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. And I was literally blown away that Howard Finkel knew, all the work that I put into the Hall of Fame. Howard Finkel knew what it was. So that was a big deal for me.
Wow, that's incredible. That must have felt good.
It was an unbelievable feeling. I can't even explain it. And, we chatted a little bit more, and then everybody kind of mingled before dinner. As I go to sit down at a table for dinner, Howard Finkel comes up and he says, Joe, do you mind if I join you? So, so he sits with us. He is also the MC for the evening, but he sits with us, eats dinner, goes up, back and forth to make announcements at the podium, comes back to the table. And in conversation, Howard says to me, he was like, how did he word it? He's like, Joe, if you ever need somebody for the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, as far as a host or announcer, please keep me in mind. And I was blown away. I was just shocked that Howard Finkel is offering his services for my event. And, it was like a dream come true. So of course I'm going to take Howard Finkel. So, we started it up. He came as a super ticket guest early in the day, 2011. It was the first time Howard worked for me. He hosted the Hall of Fame later on that evening, and he would host each and every year. So he was back. We took a little break. We took 2012 off. He came back 2013, hosted it, 2014, 2015. So he became a staple for the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. He really put us on the map. He kind of brought us to the next level. Howard Finkel is, such a household sound. The voice the second you hear it, and a WWE Hall of Famer. So that was crazy to be able to work with Howard, and not only work with Howard, but become great friends with Howard. We'd have many correspondence, many phone conversations. You know, we would talk weekly. He would call me from his cell or call me from work, and you'd always see it, you know, pop up on the caller ID. And, oh man, there he is, Howard. And we became good friends, and he would get me tickets all the time for WWE. But it was a pleasure to know Howard, and you know, we ended up honoring Howard in 2018 at the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. He was already ill, so he could not make it. But we had JJ Dillon there, who was a good friend of Howard, and he inducted Howard into the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, and he was also the recipient of the New England Icon Award. And we ended up getting Howard his award before he passed away, thankfully. And I have a picture of him holding it up, and he was just so happy and so gracious.
Oh, that's awesome. One of your idols. And you've met so many people. Who would be like a few of them, like say your top 5 outside of Howard that you were like biggest to meet?
At my events or in general?
Just overall, as a kid, as an adult, out of everybody you've ever met.
Owen Hart, definitely Owen Hart. He was one of my favorites as a kid. Undertaker. Anybody that knew me as a kid, Undertaker was always my number one. He was my favorite as far as wrestlers go. So when I finally met the Undertaker, you know, that was a really cool experience. And he was a really nice guy. Me and Gene Okerlund, always full of jokes, very witty, super nice guy, loves to make conversation, and got to work with Gene. He ended up working for me in 2015 as a super ticket guest, and he was inducted into the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame that year. And the cool thing is he was inducted into the Hall of Fame that year by Howard Finkle. And a few years prior, he inducted Howard Finkle into the WWE Hall of Fame. So he kind of, you know, paid him back. And so that was a really cool to work with Gene. And Gene actually, I announced that I was going to be working on a book project, which I kind of got away from because of real life and everything getting in the way. So I kind of put that to the side, put it on pause, but I was going to be writing a book about the business. And Gene offered to me, I didn't ask Gene, he said, I would love to be a part of your book, and I would love to, you know, maybe do the forward on it or something. And that was enormous. Unfortunately, he passed away before we did anything, but just the fact that he reached out and offered his services was just astronomical, you know?
Oh yeah, that's huge. Gene's a huge, I mean, all the way back to the late 70s. I remember seeing him in 1980 on AWA days.
Yep. Yep.
So how did the Whole Foods thing come about? Was that just something you knew the block party was going on and you figured you'd put on some shows? You hadn't done shows in so long, and then all of a sudden.
Yeah, I was on the committee for the block party, and we were trying to tie in everything to bring the people in. So we had the rock wall climbing, we had the watermelon eating contest. You know, we got the whole neighborhood involved. We had the whole street blocked off. We had the live DJ. We had the cotton candy machine. We had, you know, tons and tons of vendors and tents. And I said, well, what if we bring pro wrestling? You know, what if we bring a ring, have matches right there in the street or in the parking lot, and it would be for charity, which it was. You know, anybody who wanted to make donations could. And they were all for it. The store supported me. Whole Foods supported the idea. And it was awesome. I got people from all over willing to work the show. So people came in from Rhode Island and Mass and Connecticut and New Hampshire, Maine, Vermont. I mean, they were coming in from all over. So we had a great showing of support, and they were hot shows. It was 100 degrees both years, 2010 and 2011. They boiled an egg one year on the ring canvas. That's how hot it was. But some great memories, and they were just fun, carefree shows. You know what I mean? They were long shows. They were meant to be long. There were supposed to be matches, you know, to fill up the entire block party throughout the day. So we had probably 10, 12 matches, and it was a 4 or 5 hour event, but they were a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, I mean, I hadn't been to a show in probably 6 years, and I come out of quote unquote retirement to film that show for you. I remember you asked me, and I come down. I had been, and it was hot, man, out there filming. I remember how hot it was.
It was rough. It was, yeah, like I said, 100 degrees, and I think they were both in July, both years. But man, couldn't have been a hotter day. Should have done it in the fall, I guess.
And I don't know if you ever wrestled again, but that was supposed to be Kevin Charisma's retirement match. I don't know if you ever ended up retiring after that.
I believe that was it for him. That was his last hurrah. And what I did is I brought a lot of guys from the past, you know, to those shows to kind of do one more run, like Steak Daddy Peter B, who was a referee. He was a manager. You know, he came out of retirement for that block party show, and that was his last show. He retired. Cody Boynes, who used to host the cable show Talkin' Wrestling, he would manage on the indie scene as Mama. He would wear a blonde wig. He was supposed to be an old woman. And, you know, he came out of retirement as Mama on the show. Superstar Butch Petrillo, who had been retired for years, he came out of retirement. Johnny Justice came out of retirement. So Stacy Lopes came out of retirement as Dane. So it was cool to see all these old faces, people that you hadn't seen in a long time. Sandy Starr. And it was also mixed in with a lot of up and coming people. You know, JT Dunn, before he really made a name for himself. Mercedes KV against Taylor Hendricks. You know, Taylor Hendricks went on to TNA, and Mercedes KV went on to be known as Sasha Banks in the WWE. So never know who you're going to see at a Whole Foods block party.
I didn't even realize they were on that. That's the one tape show that I don't have, because I don't have my tape of that. I brought it up to Brandon Webb the other day that he was on it. He didn't even remember it, and I sent him my recording of it, and he's like, you were there? I don't even remember that. I said, yeah, that's the only time I ever remember meeting you. He must have just been starting then.
Brandon Webb's, that would have been 2011 probably. Yeah, I mean, he must have been pretty new at that point.
Not to mention Matt Tavern was there. Vinny Mag, I don't know how to say his last name. Vinny, that's in the ROH now.
Matt Taven. Yeah, there were a lot of faces on there that have really made a name for themselves since then.